I think that there's so much, of course, there's explicit biases, but there's also implicit biases, and there's almost like an unconscious bias that a lot of people have. They're not even aware of it. So, for example, if you ask the average person, white person, so, well, I'm not racist. I'm not racist at all. But then they begin to speak, and quickly you begin to find these implicit statements that they make that carry that little bit of tinge of, for example, to give an example, Black Lives Matter. Well, all lives matter. Well, we understand, you and I understand that when the moment that you say all lives matter, you are basically, it's a way of coming against the fact that Black Lives Matter.
Right.
It's like, you know what I mean? It's like saying, well, we want to be more inclusive, but why are you bringing that up? Why do you feel the need to bring that up? Rather than just identifying with someone else's pain and the problems that they've gone through and recognizing that, why do you have to bring that up? So that's like an implicit, racist, unconscious bias. And so you do have a lot of that. And I think another thing that, going back to what you're talking about here, I think that there's also a lot of fear. I was speaking to someone recently someone who works with me, and she was saying that I started asking her, and she said, well, I'm really afraid. And I pinpointed something in her. She's afraid of change. It's not that she is in it, she's not, I wouldn't say she's racist, but some of her views become racist because she's afraid. She's afraid of change. She's afraid of how it's going to affect her. She doesn't like that. And so she likes the status quo. So what you see, and you see how, I don't want to get political here, but Trump capitalized on that when he said, make America great again. In other words, we're talking about something that happened. We want to go back. We don't want to change. We want to keep things the way they are. And that is a lack. That's to me, is a implicit racism built into that, and many people don't recognize that. But there is, I think that's the bigger struggle than even the crazies who just are completely racist, but there's this systemically, there are these implicit racist acts that we are not even aware of. They are unconscious to most of us. I remember, for example, many years ago as a white man, I'm at the Maple Leaf Square, what's it called now in New York City? Maple Leaf Square Garden. No, sorry, Madison Square Garden.
Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Yep. You're thinking of Maple Leaf Toronto since you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So Madison Square Garden, I was there, and I don't know if you remember Peter Jennings.
Oh, absolutely.
And so there was a big crowd there, and everybody was clearing out the building. I was just there in attendance. I was a nobody, and but I'm tall, I was well dressed and so on, had a suit on and the whole thing. And Peter Jennings was very close to me, and he was there with a group of people. So he walked out, he had a special attention. So I came, and there were other people who were between me and Peter Jennings, and he waved them all off. The guy was standing at the guard, he says, you go up there, you go there. But me, for some reason, he said, oh, you come here this way, because he thought that I belonged. And I thought, well, that's white privilege, and we don't even know about it. There's so many different things that people make judgments based on our color of our skin, and those are the things that we need to uproot, because those are tremendous sores in our country's history that we have to be very deliberate about eradicating, that we have to be very forceful about eradicating. And that's why I'm very thankful for the incredible push that we're seeing right now, because it's needed. We have to take drastic steps to end this. And so, yeah. No,
so even like with the word white privilege, the phrase, why are so many white people offended by that phrase? Like, what is the issue with, like, I have white friends that hate the words white privilege. Like, okay, I mean, you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's, for most Black people, whether it's, we're going in with white privilege, or whether we just say white privilege, it's just white privilege. It's like, it's not, it just is what it is, rather than, it's not taking away from, you don't take away privilege, is there. So what do you think the denial, like you said it, like you understand it, right? So most white folks get really bent out of shape when they hear that. Why? What is it?
because they don't, I think sometimes they don't feel like they're privileged themselves, and they feel like, oh, I don't, because they've never set themselves in other person's shoes. So they look at their own circumstances, and they think, well, I'm not privileged. I'm dealing with all these problems. I got all these different issues in my life. I resent the fact that someone calls me a privilege. So I think people feel that way, but it's because they have never placed themselves in another person's shoes. I remember one time, and I remember one time I was driving up to Los Angeles, and it was my wife and I and our kids in one car, and we had this other couple in the car following us, and he was a black gentleman, and so we were driving, and suddenly he was following me the entire time, and suddenly he gets pulled over by the cop. I never got pulled over, but he got pulled over, and I began to realize there is something here that is wrong. That is, did he have the thought, I'm going to pull him over because he's black and he seems like he's following with his white guy? He probably didn't, but there is just like this unconscious thing, unconscious bias. And we have to be, in my mind, we have to eradicate that. And that's what we have to admit. There is white privilege. We may not think that there is, but if you actually go and speak to, as I had spoken to so many of my friends, my black friends, and I hear their stories of what they've had to go through, I realize, oh my goodness, there are some tremendous privileges that I've had that I've never been able to understand. And unless you actually uh, listen and hear what other people have to say, you have to place yourself in somebody else's life. You have to see yourself in them and actually hear their stories and listen to the stories very carefully. And the more you do that, I think we begin to appreciate one another. You begin to see each other's pain and sorrows, and then you begin to realize, yeah, maybe I have been very blessed. And that's not the wrong word. I don't want to use that, because we're all blessed. But um, maybe there is white privilege, and I may not have been aware of it, but when I actually see what my black friends have gone through, I recognize it.